The sudden chime sliced through the cabin like a blade, sharp and urgent, jolting passengers from half-sleep as the aircraft shuddered hard enough to rattle teeth and courage alike, and in seat 8A a single father jolted awake with his heart already racing, the kind of instinctive fear that never leaves a man who once flew into combat and learned that peace is fragile and always borrowed. Before the story pulls you deeper into that trembling cabin, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to KNH Stories if you believe in kindness and second chances, because stories like this live on only when hearts choose to carry them forward. He had boarded the flight exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that sinks into bones and makes even fear feel distant. Life had not been gentle to him since the war ended. He was a single dad now, raising a small daughter who slept with a nightlight and asked questions he struggled to answer, questions about why her mother was gone, why loud noises made her father flinch, and why some days he stared at nothing as if the past were still alive. That morning he had kissed her forehead, promised he would be back by bedtime, and boarded the plane with a weight heavier than his carry-on. Seat 8A was an aisle seat, close enough to the front to feel important, far enough from the cockpit to forget who he used to be. As the engines droned, sleep had claimed him, not the gentle kind, but the deep collapse of a man who had been strong for too long. The turbulence came without warning, violent enough to tilt coffee cups and steal breath. Overhead bins creaked, a baby cried, and the calm illusion of routine flight fractured. The aircraft lurched again, sharper this time, and a murmur spread through the cabin like a ripple across water. Fear has a sound, and it filled the air with whispers, prayers, and held breaths. Somewhere beyond the cabin walls, something was wrong, terribly wrong. Warning lights blinked in the cockpit, and calculations were being made that no passenger could see, decisions balanced on seconds and skill. The announcement followed, carefully controlled but strained beneath the surface, requesting calm while asking if any combat pilots were on board. The words traveled down the aisle, brushing shoulders and hearts, landing finally in seat 8A, where the single dad sat upright, every nerve awake, his past slamming into his present. He had buried that life under school lunches and bedtime stories, under soccer practices and grocery lists, telling himself he was done being the man who flew into danger. But training does not disappear, and neither does responsibility. His hands, steady despite the pounding in his chest, rested on his knees as memories surged back, memories of smoke-filled skies, malfunctioning instruments, and the terrifying clarity that comes when there is no one else to rely on. He thought of his daughter, of her small fingers wrapped around his thumb, of the promise he had made that morning. Fear whispered that if he stood up now, he might not keep that promise. But another voice, deeper and older, reminded him that survival is sometimes earned by stepping forward, not back. Around him, passengers clutched armrests and each other, eyes wide, faces pale, strangers bound together by shared uncertainty. He saw not faces, but lives, futures, families waiting at arrivals halls, and in that instant, the decision was no longer about him. He rose slowly, feeling every year of his life in his joints, every mile he had flown etched into muscle memory. The aisle felt narrow, the cabin suddenly smaller, as if the plane itself were holding its breath. Each step toward the cockpit carried the weight of everything he had lost and everything he still hoped to protect. He was no longer just a passenger, he was a father, a survivor, and a man answering a call he never expected to hear again. Inside the cockpit, the air was tense, heavy with focus and controlled urgency. Systems were being managed, procedures followed, but something critical had failed, and options were narrowing. The single dad absorbed the situation quickly, his mind slipping into a familiar clarity, fear sharpening rather than dulling his thoughts. He did not need recognition or reassurance, the language of flight was still fluent in him. As the aircraft bucked again, he anchored himself, drawing on years of discipline forged under fire, translating chaos into manageable steps. Time stretched strangely, minutes feeling like hours, as the plane fought its way through the sky. Sweat beaded on foreheads, both in the cockpit and the cabin, where passengers sensed the gravity of the moment even without understanding its details. The man from seat 8A worked silently, his focus absolute, his thoughts occasionally flickering to his daughter's smile, using it as fuel rather than distraction. This was not heroism as movies portray it, not glory or bravado, but quiet resolve, the kind that grows from loving something more than oneself. Gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, the aircraft steadied. The violent shuddering softened into manageable turbulence, then into something resembling normal flight. A collective breath was released, though no one yet dared to believe the danger had passed. Below them, land appeared through breaks in the cloud, solid and forgiving. The descent was tense but controlled, each adjustment deliberate, each second earned. When the wheels finally touched the runway, the impact was firm, unmistakably real, and the cabin erupted in a sound that was half relief, half disbelief. The single dad returned to his seat quietly, his legs trembling now that the crisis had passed. Applause swelled around him, but he kept his gaze forward, emotion tightening his throat. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a father who had done what he could to make it home. As the plane taxied to a stop, tears streamed freely down faces that had moments ago been frozen with fear, strangers exchanging grateful looks, some realizing how close they had come to never seeing their loved ones again. Later, walking through the terminal, he checked his phone to find a message waiting, a simple photo of his daughter holding her favorite toy, captioned with a crooked heart. The weight he had carried onto the plane finally eased, replaced by something warmer, steadier. He had faced his past not to relive it, but to use it, to turn old scars into something that mattered. That flight did not erase his pain or his fears, but it reminded him that broken things can still save lives, that second chances are sometimes earned in the air between terror and hope. If this story touched your heart, if you felt the fear, the courage, and the quiet love that carried a father from seat 8A to the cockpit and back again, please take a moment now to like, share, and comment on this video, and subscribe to KNH Stories to help more stories like this reach those who need them. And before the ending, leave a comment telling us what you would have done in his place, because your voice matters here. The plane eventually emptied, the moment fading into memory for everyone else, but for one single dad, it became a turning point, a reminder that even when life strips you down to exhaustion and doubt, the strength to rise can still be there, waiting for the moment it is needed most.